The loudest person in the room usually looks rich. The quiet one usually is rich. And today, I'm going to show you why quiet people, introverts, observers, low-key thinkers, often build wealth faster than everyone else, without hustle, without hype, and without burning out. By the end of this video, you'll understand the 6 invisible advantages quiet people have with money, and you'll see why most financial advice actually works against you, especially if you're not naturally loud, aggressive, or constantly trying to be seen. So stay with me, because advantage number 4 is the one almost everyone misses. And once you see it, it quietly changes everything. Let's start with something uncomfortable. In today's world, loud behavior is rewarded. Talking fast, posting constantly, showing success early. If you're visible, you're praised. If you're quiet, you're overlooked. But here's the part most people miss. Wealth doesn't grow on attention. It grows on consistency and restraint. And this is where quiet people accidentally win. Not because they're trying to be different, but because their nature pushes them toward the behaviors that money actually rewards. Most people feel constant pressure to perform success, to look busy, to look confident, to look ahead. Quiet people feel a different pressure. They feel pressure to understand outcomes, to ask, does this actually work? What happens if I repeat this for 10 years? What breaks if the market changes? That difference sounds small, but financially, it's massive. Because loud people often optimize for being seen, for being validated, for being first. They want movement. They want momentum. They want feedback. Quiet people optimize for something else. They optimize for being correct, for being early, without needing recognition, and for being patient, when patience is uncomfortable. And money rewards the second group. Not immediately, not publicly, but eventually. Brief pause. Let me show you how. Quiet people don't react quickly. They process deeply. When something happens, they don't rush to respond. They sit with it. They observe patterns. They replay conversations in their head. They notice trends forming long before they feel the need to speak about them. This way of thinking has a name. In finance, it's called systems thinking. It means focusing less on individual wins and more on the structure that keeps producing results over time. On-screen text appears. Systems over motivation. Most people approach money emotionally. They ask questions like, how do I make money fast? What's the next opportunity? What's working right now? Quiet people tend to ask a very different question. They ask, what keeps making money even when I'm not excited? When motivation disappears, what still works? When discipline fades, what keeps moving forward anyway? And once you start thinking this way, your financial choices change. Instead of chasing exciting opportunities, quiet people gravitate toward systems. They choose index investing, not because it's flashy, but because it works without constant decision-making. They invest in long-term skills, skills that compound quietly and increase their value year after year. They build scalable income, income that doesn't depend on how loud they are or how visible they feel that day. And yes, they choose boring but reliable plays. Because boring is predictable, and predictable is profitable. This is the part most people struggle to accept. Boring isn't a weakness in finance. It's an advantage. Here's a truth most influencers won't say out loud. The louder the strategy, the shorter its lifespan. If everyone is talking about it, if everyone is rushing into it, if everyone feels urgency, it's usually already crowded. Quiet strategies don't attract attention. They don't look impressive in screenshots. They don't make for viral posts, but they compound. They grow slowly, consistently, and without drama, because nobody is rushing into them. And in finance, the fewer people rushing, the more room there is for patience to be rewarded. That's why quiet people often look like they're doing less. But over time, they end up with more. We need to talk about ego, because ego is expensive, not emotionally, financially. Ego spends money before it's earned. It buys cars before assets. It chooses flex before freedom. And it takes risk before readiness. Most people don't realize this while it's happening. Ego disguises itself as confidence. It whispers, you deserve this. They should see how well you're doing. This proves you're winning. But quiet people tend to operate differently. They usually don't crave validation from strangers. They crave internal certainty. They want to know deep down that what they're doing actually works. So instead of asking, how does this look? They ask a quieter, more powerful question. Does this actually work? Will this still make sense 5 years from now? Will I regret this when nobody is watching? And that question alone changes everything. Visual reference implied. When you look at wealth over time, there's a clear pattern. Lifestyle inflation rise quickly, but net worth often lags behind. Quiet people resist that curve. They delay rewards, not because they can't afford them, but because they understand timing. They reinvest quietly into assets that don't impress anyone at dinner, into decisions that don't translate well on social media. And they let people underestimate them. They don't correct assumptions. They don't explain their plan. They don't rush to prove progress. And being underestimated is one of the safest financial positions you can be in. There's no pressure to perform, no expectation to maintain an image, no audience demanding constant growth. You're free to move slowly and strategically. Brief pause it. But there's a darker advantage here, one that almost nobody talks about, and it's uncomfortable. Quiet people don't just avoid ego-driven mistakes. They also avoid ego-driven risks. They don't gamble to feel alive. They don't overextend to feel important. They don't confuse attention with opportunity. And over time, that restraint quietly protects their net worth. Next, I want to show you how this plays out when noise enters the picture. The average person today is drowning in noise. Hot stocks, crypto hype, this changed my life posts, urgent opportunities that somehow disappear by next week. There's always something new, always something trending, always something telling you that you're late and need to act now. Quiet people don't consume as much of this. And it's not because they're smarter, it's because noise exhausts them. The constant urgency, every second, the emotional swings, the pressure to react, it drains their energy. So, without trying, they filter. They don't chase every idea. They don't pivot their strategy every month. And they don't rebuild their entire financial plan every time Twitter panics. While others are reacting in real time, quiet people are stepping back. They're asking slower questions. What actually changed? Is this signal or just noise? Does this matter in 5 years? And that creates something rare. Strategic calm. On-screen text appears. Calm compounds. Because money grows best in calm environments. Think about it. Most wealth isn't lost because someone picked the wrong asset. It's lost because they couldn't sit still. They bought too high. They sold too early. They jumped from one idea to the next. Volatility doesn't kill wealth. Overaction does. And quiet people are naturally resistant to overreaction. They don't need constant stimulation. They're comfortable with long periods where nothing exciting happens. And in finance, nothing happening is often a good sign. It means the system is working. It means compounding is doing its job. While others are stressed, refreshing charts, and chasing headlines, quiet people are letting time do the heavy lifting. They understand something most people learn too late. You don't need to be everywhere. You don't need to catch every wave. You just need to avoid being shaken out. And by avoiding noise, they protect their focus. They protect their energy. And most importantly, they protect their capital. Brief pause, and this ability to stay calm, to stay detached. It leads to a kind of leverage that most people never develop. And that's what we'll talk about next. Quiet people spend more time alone, and that's usually framed as a weakness, as if something is missing, as if being alone means being behind. But solitude is not emptiness. Solitude is where leverage is built, because leverage doesn't come from being busy. It comes from depth, and depth requires space. Leverage comes from deep work, from focusing on a single problem long enough to actually solve it, from skill mastery, not surface-level knowledge, but real understanding, and from thinking without interruption. No notifications, no urgency, no pressure to perform. Most wealth today doesn't come from working harder. It comes from thinking clearer, from seeing connections other people miss, from designing systems instead of reacting to tasks. And this is where quiet people naturally excel. They build rare skills that take time, skills that don't reward you immediately, but reward you disproportionately later. They make asymmetric bets, decisions where the downside is limited, but the upside compounds. Not reckless risks, thoughtful ones, and they commit to long-term projects that don't pay attention to trends, projects that don't rely on constant motivation, projects that grow slowly, and then suddenly, all at once. While others are networking loudly, posting progress, explaining their ideas before they're finished, Quiet people are building something privately, something that doesn't need permission, something that doesn't need applause. They don't announce it early. They don't rush to validate it. They let it mature. And when it works, it scales. Because leverage multiplies effort. 1 hour of focused work turns into 10. One good decision turns into years of returns. And that's the real advantage of solitude. It protects the thinking that creates leverage. Not everyone can tolerate it. Not everyone wants it. But for quiet people, it's home. And when you learn to use it intentionally, it becomes one of the most powerful financial tools you have. Short pose. And next, I want to show you why quiet people don't rush time, and why that patience changes everything. Here's a simple rule. Loud people try to impress time. They rush, they sprint, they chase every opportunity that makes a sound. Quiet people partner with it. They don't rush compounding. They don't force timelines. They don't need to prove they're ahead. They understand that results follow patience. They're comfortable being early and invisible. Most people can't see it. They measure progress by noise, by recognition, by applause. But quiet people measure it differently. They measure it by outcomes. They measure it by whether their decisions are sustainable over years. This is why many quiet people seem behind in their 20 seconds. Still studying, still building skills quietly, still stacking small wins that nobody notices, but mysteriously comfortable in their 40 seconds. When wealth has quietly grown, when skills have matured, when systems have compounded without interference. Visual cue. Timeline showing slow, early growth, steep later curve. They understand something deeply. Time doesn't reward intensity. It doesn't reward how loud you are. It doesn't reward how fast you can move. It rewards consistency. Small, repeated, deliberate actions over long periods. Quiet people respect that rule. They know that patience is not passive. It's active, strategic, intentional. They let compounding do its work. They allow skills, decisions, and money to grow organically. And in doing so, they create advantages that loud, impatient people rarely see coming. Because while others chase fast results, quiet people quietly prepare for the moment when compounding accelerates. And when it does, the results are often disproportionate, unexpected, and lasting. So why do quiet people really build wealth faster? It's not because they take bigger risks. It's not because they have secret shortcuts. It's because wealth is not built in public. It's not built for applause. It's not built for likes, recognition, or validation. Wealth is built through simple, repeatable actions, through repetition, through patience, through boring decisions made consistently over years. Quiet people understand this instinctively. They don't need applause to keep going. They don't burn energy explaining themselves. They don't announce progress before it's real. They don't spend success before it arrives. They don't rush the process to prove a point. They just keep showing up, day after day, month after month, making the same small, calculated choices, even when no one is watching. And that's where the magic happens. The compounding of decisions, the steady growth that looks invisible from the outside, but eventually becomes undeniable. Because when loud, flashy strategies fade, quiet strategies endure. When hype-driven wealth crashes, quiet wealth continues to grow. And while others are exhausted from chasing trends, quiet people are still building, still compounding, still investing in themselves and their systems. By the time people notice, the quiet ones are already ahead. Not because they tried to impress, not because they were lucky, not because they worked harder in visible ways, but because they worked smarter, more intentionally, and more patiently than almost anyone else. That's the real reason quiet people win. They play the long game. They respect time, and they trust the process. And when you start thinking this way yourself, you begin to see the advantage quietly growing around you. Short pose. And that's how quiet wealth becomes real wealth. If you've ever felt behind because you're quiet, thoughtful, réservé, let me be clear. You are not behind. You're not failing. You're not missing your chance. You're just playing a longer game. And here's the truth about the longer game. The longer the game, the fewer people make it to the end. The ones who quit early, who chase attention, who try to prove themselves too quickly, they fall off. They burn out. They never see the full payoff. But quiet people, they endure. They move deliberately. They act patiently. They trust their process. And that's exactly who this channel is for. For people who build wealth without noise, without hype, without the need for constant validation. If that sounds like you, consider subscribing, because quiet wealth is still wealth. And over time, it becomes the kind that lasts.